there, Facebook again. It's my afternoon for once here, and just wanting to bring this special message to you guys. Again, it's Vanessa here, motivational speaker, trainer, and head coach at Live, Love, Give. And today's message, I'm taking a little bit of a twist and a little bit of a turn today, and I wanted to talk about the truth about extroverts and introverts and how we all think we know what that means, what those ideas mean, but ultimately I want to try and give you a bit of a new perspective on it. So just wanting to say hi to Elena and Raul and Michael. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. I wasn't sure how many people could jump on at this time, depending on time zone. So awesome to have you, Michael. Thank you so much. And Anyeta, lovely to have you back. And Hassan, thank you so much for joining me live today. And Jamie, awesome. Maybe it's a good time. I don't know. And Leonie, thank you so much from Brussels. And Manu, thank you so much for joining me, guys. Laval, awesome. You guys rock. I was so thinking that nobody would be available at this time, so maybe this is a really good time. So Sharif, thank you so much for joining me. It's so awesome to have you all here because I want to talk about a topic that I'm really energized and excited about. And ultimately, hey Mark, hey, I'm going to get so distracted by you guys. Chandishran, I'm sorry, I can't say your name, but I'm so grateful that you're here. And Yvette and Lilia and Joseph. Awesome. Okay. And Real. Okay. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to get into the content now. So ultimately, what the concept I want to bring to you guys today is all about energy. It's all about energy management and how, 50% of the population are different from the other 50%. And I want to break it down to the differences between introverts and extroverts. And I know we've all heard what an introvert is, what an extrovert is. We think we know. Ultimately, most of society thinks that, it's the extrovert, they're the life of the party, they're always got to be around people, and they think that introverts are ultimately, reclusive, don't really want to be alone and all this sort of stuff. And ultimately, that's really just focused on some behaviors that sometimes are true, but not always. There are definitely extroverts out there who are more shy in nature, and there are definitely more introverts who love being the center of a party atmosphere. So I just want to sort of get that clear for now before we dive into the real differences between what an introvert is and what an extrovert is. And another quick hi to Jason and Vicky and Neymar. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me and for your comments. I appreciate them. And ultimately, what it comes down to in terms of the differences between an introvert and an extrovert is it's which world is the real world to us as an individual. So for an extrovert, the outside world, the external world is the real world. What's happening in the environment outside of the self is ultimately, where we believe the real world is. But for an introvert, it's more about the inner world being the real world. And ultimately, this is how we manage our energy. So extroverted people, they actually gain energy and rejuvenate their batteries by engaging in the external environment. It doesn't necessarily have to be with other people. It could be with a project that they're working on, an idea, a concept that they're creating in the external world. It could be with nature, so it's not necessarily that they have to be some crazy people person, but that's how they recharge their batteries. And on the flip side, introverts, they actually recharge and re-energize themselves by going internally. So going inside the self, by getting inside their minds and getting out of the external environment. And ultimately, that's why we look at these introverts, extroverts, and we think that it's the extroverts who have to be around people and it's the introverts who have to be alone. But ultimately, there's different ways that we do that as individuals based on our actual brain wiring, which is another level deeper once we uncover whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. But ultimately, that's what it's all about. So, as I said, those extroverted people, right? This is another way I like to talk into the idea of situational depression, because extroverts, because they get their energy from interacting with the external environment, if they have to be inside themselves for too long, alone for too long, trapped just with their own thoughts for too long, they can often get those feelings of depression. They lose energy, they become unmotivated. And on the flip side, the introverted people, if they get too much in interaction in their external environment, it's really poor energy management for them. Because ultimately, an introvert, because the real world to an introvert is their internal world, so that means that everything that comes to them from the external world, it could be contradictory to what their internal world tells them. Therefore, an introvert having new information come into them from the external environment, if it doesn't gel with them, if it doesn't really align with what their inner world tells them, it means they've got to go away. They've got to process what they've taken in, and it takes energy for them to do so. So that's why they can be a little bit more, they're less likely to just jump into a situation and interact and gather that more information from the external environment, because they've got to be more selective, because they have to make sure that it gels with their inner world, and therefore it can be kind of taxing for them. That's why an extrovert who's been interactive in their realm, in that external world, they can be often more energized, whereas an introvert can have just as much fun in that external environment, but they need to just recharge their batteries. So I hope that this has been making sense to you guys. Let me know if that's resonating, if it's making sense. And thank you so much for joining me, Shalendra and Theogene and Yvette. Nice to have you. Belinda, yes, awesome. And Sara, how do you explain depression without people but act and think more introverted? Okay, so if you've got depression but you without people, so you feel, let me check if I'm getting this right. I think you're asking me, how do you explain that you've got depression because you're not around and engaging with people, but you think that you're more introverted? Just clarify that with me, Sara. But if that's what you're sort of meaning, I don't think that all depression stems from whether you're introverted or extroverted at all. It's one way of looking at it. When I work with an individual and they are experiencing, some form of depression, I want to break it down, and this is just one way of sort of filtering through what's going on for an individual. Often when we get that self-awareness around how our brains are wired, and ultimately that's what the introvert extrovert is sort of like up here on the surface level, to go deep into working out how our brain is wired as an individual. And what happens is, each and every one of us, we have this particular mental process, which is like our flow state. It energizes us. And introverts have an introverted flow state, and extroverts have an extroverted flow state. So when we're not getting enough time in that flow state where we gain all our energy, that's when we can often have those symptoms and experiences of forms of depression. So it's just a way that I like to tap into and just check, where is that coming from? That's just one sort of little avenue. I hope that that's helped. Let me know if I haven't answered that correctly for you, or if I didn't get your question right, Sara. And Raphael, thank you for joining. Glad it's resonating, Yvette. Thank you. And Jamantis, thank you for joining. And Penelope, Daniel, awesome. Glad that was what you were thinking there, Sara. And Jay, nice to have you. Guys, do you have any more questions? Is this something that is of interest to you? Another little thing that I wanted to introduce in terms of extrovert, introvert, I think that it's really powerful to get this, because I'm a big believer in understanding the self, and then you can therefore understand others, and that's ultimately how we build connection. If we don't understand ourselves, we don't understand other people, it's really hard to maintain quality connection and build real depth in our relationships. So it's why I kind of like this tool to just give you an overview of the two different people, introverts or extroverts. And what I want to say is that we're all on a scale. There's no black or white. I'm just looking at this like it's in a vacuum for you right now, so that you can start to understand these concepts. And the other thing I wanted to mention was, extroverts, the outer world is their real world. They kind of become after thinkers. It's almost like extroverts like to engage in the external world, take that action in the external world to figure out what's right or wrong for them. Whereas introverted people, they're before thinkers. They like to really kind of mull over in their mind the different possibilities about what that decision will, what will happen there, and ultimately then make the step forward. So that's just another little way that, introverts and extroverts are different. But ultimately, the reason I wanted to bring it to you guys today is in terms of energy management. And recognizing that, when we identify whether we're extroverted or introverted and we're not feeling energized, we can tap into the fact that we may not be spending enough time in what we call our driver process, in that flow state. So it's really valuable to identify how your brain is wired as an individual, so that you have the tools to know, hey, I know if I'm engaging more in this mental process, it's going to recharge my batteries again. And that's maybe why I'm experiencing some depression here, I'm not feeling like I'm myself right now. So ultimately, that's why I love to talk into it. And guys, if you ever want to discover how your brain is wired, I would absolutely love to help you do that. I do some personality profiling sessions, which are awesome, and ultimately they're a big part of what I do, and a big reason why I love doing what I do, because the personal development industry can often be very one size fits all, and often we can go down this path and we can get all into this personal development and following all the strategies of these people that we admire, but ultimately they can be leading us down a path that's not aligned with us as an individual. Very good for them and other people of their personality type, but not necessarily for us. So when we get the system of how we are wired as an individual, we know where to go from there. We know what's best for our personal growth. We know where we get the energy from. We know what's happening to us when we're overwhelmed and stressed and how to deal with it. And we know what happens to us when we get triggered and defensive in our relationships, because it all stems from how our individual brains are wired. So if that's ever of interest to you, make sure that you reach out to me. I'd love to take you through that. It's an awesome process, and something that I love sharing with all of you guys. So definitely let me know. And Rian, thank you for joining me. And yes, Agneta, is it weird that I feel half and half? Yes. So like I said, you're on a scale of introvertedness and extrovertedness. But what I would say to you is that when you are engaged, so there is a particular mental process that 80% of your life is filtered through. And if I was to ask you to describe yourself, 80% of what you would describe would come from this mental process, and it's either an introverted or an extroverted process. And then as we grow and develop as individuals, we balance ourselves out with a process of the opposite attitude, in terms of, if your driver is an extroverted process, we balance ourselves out with an introverted process. But what I would say is that it depends. There's so many different avenues to go down this. I'd need to know what your particular personality type was, Agneta, in order to give you a bit more guidance there. But what I would say is that when we are engaged, fully engaged in that process of our driver, we know who we are. We're feeling really certain. So you either feel like when you're most like yourself, you either feel more extroverted or you feel more introverted. So, and then different scenarios, circumstances, we operate from a different realm. I think my battery might be dying. But yeah, so I hope that was helpful to you, Agneta. Thank you for your comments. And Natasha, lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Awesome. I'm glad that this message is valuable to you, Yvette. Thank you so much. And I've got a cord here. I'm just going to plug my phone in quickly. I think it might run out. Awesome. It's plugged in. All right. So I did have a question that came in from Sara, who asks awesome questions, and I love seeing her on here. So thank you for asking that question. And what it was how do you gain back belief in yourself and trust yourself again? And I just thought it was such a great question that, I myself have had to, build that belief in myself, build that trust in myself. And there was many times in my life where I didn't believe in myself and I didn't trust myself, and I'm still engaging more and more of that. I believe that that's a constant never-ending journey of, you know, getting more and more belief and trust within yourself. But ultimately what I've found on my journey is that how you build that belief and that trust is by starting to make little valuable promises to yourself about nurturing yourself as an individual, doing something for you, treating yourself like you would your own child, your own best friend, somebody that you loved and adored, you know, and doing something small and a small commitment that you can do for yourself that tells you, hey, I value you, you're worthy, you deserve this, okay? So it might be that every morning you write something that you're grateful for. It might be you might ask yourself, well, what could I be proud of myself for? Or it might just be that, you whatever your sort of nurturing process is for you, something that tells you, hey, you're worth it. Maybe it's going for a workout, going to the gym. Maybe it's about making a green juice and just like nurturing your insides, valuing yourself. Something small and tiny is the best place to start, something that you can be consistent with on a daily basis and not place these big expectations about what you have to do on yourself, but actually just bring it back to the small thing and start building that commitment to yourself that you're following through on, and it's a message you're sending yourself that you value yourself. I hope that was a very general answer that I've given you, Sara. I would love to talk more in depth with you about your particular situation, scenario, what your experience has been, to be able to give you some more specific advice on that. But that is a general sort of answer for you, and for all of you guys out there who are wanting to build more belief and trust in yourself. It takes you honoring yourself. When you honor yourself, when you value yourself, when you do something small and consistent for yourself, you start to believe and trust in yourself a whole bunch more. So I really hope that was valuable to you guys, and I just want to scroll up here and awesome, Agneta, glad that was an aha. And Penelope, I'm a Zumba instructor. Awesome. And feel free when dancing. I always thought I was an introvert, but maybe not. I feel energized when with people, but still need space sometimes. Definitely. And the thing is, we've all got both. So we've all got introvertedness and extrovertedness. So when I talk about being an introvert or an extrovert, I'm really talking about that driver process, which is where we gain most of our energy from. And ultimately that's either going to be introverted or extroverted. And there's different varieties of that. I'm just trying to keep it general for you guys. But ultimately also, we tend to be more introverted in scenarios, situations where they're just not aligned with our values. For me personally, my driver process is a process called harmony, and it's all about connectivity. But what it is, it's a depth of connectivity. So, I found myself at times, being in a group of people where the conversation was just, to me, like just not interesting to me, just totally not interesting to me. And to me, it had no real depth. And so I found myself feeling kind of introverted in that scenario. But then you get me engaged in a really meaningful, deep conversation about something that matters to me, and I'm a total extrovert, and my driver process is an extroverted process. So it's different depending on the situation, depending on what drives you as an individual. We can definitely, when we're not living in our values or not being surrounded by things that we value, we can show up more introverted. And it sounds like, Penelope, you are getting so energized by being around those people. When you're in that Zumba class, teaching that Zumba class, you're probably on fire, and you probably leave that class feeling totally on top of the world and energized. And and we all need alone time as well. It's just the degree to which we need alone time. So extroverted people, they can get away with maybe having a couple of hours a week of alone time, whereas introverted people, they probably need a couple of hours a day alone time. So and like I said, we're all on this sort of sliding scale, so it's not black or white. But I appreciate your comments, and I hope it's helpful to you guys. And thanks for checking in, Brett. Lovely to have you here. And Yvette, I think self-confidence has a lot to do with the company you keep too. Awesome comment. Yes, that is so, so true. And the more you start valuing you, the more you pull away and, you retract from the people who don't value you, and they don't build your self-confidence up. Like, ultimately, we all want to feel connected and we all want to feel special. And if the people in our lives don't make us feel that way, it's, that we don't really want to be there. It can make us feel more introverted. It can make us feel judged. So we don't open up, we don't get energized, and we don't express ourselves. So yeah, awesome comment, Yvette. Thank you so much. And Judy, nice to have you. And Sara, I'm on a 10-day self-care and compassion challenge. Awesome. So I'll try this to gain more trust, belief, and acceptance. That's awesome. That's so awesome to hear, Sara. Sounds really interesting. I'm all about, having those sort of short challenges for yourself, because that's ultimately, when you make just a small commitment, like 10 days of doing something great for yourself, building that compassion, that belief, that trust, and not overdoing it, not over expecting yourself, and just, being loving to yourself. Like you get to that 10 days, you feel the progress, you start to build that confidence in yourself and that trust and belief in yourself. So that is awesome. Glad to hear that. And Jen, awesome to have you here. And I'm so grateful that this is resonating. Bit of a different twist today. And Penelope, I sure do. Thanks so much for that. You're so welcome. Guys, that was really my message to you guys today. I hope that you got a couple of ahas, that extrovertedness and that introvertedness are ultimately how we manage our energy. Where do we go to manage our energy? And is it in the external environment or is it in our internal environment? And I hope that resonates, because it's so valuable for building relationships to be able to understand what your needs are and understand what another person's needs are. And it's so funny how much, an extrovert and an introvert tend to be attracted to one another, and then we try and expect the other person to be just like us, and we don't give them the time, space, and energy that they need to go and recharge their batteries. So hope that was valuable. And just Sara, you've commented here, I was introverted when I don't align with them, which is based on the so-called friends. When I left, I can be more me. I get in the zone of talking, self-expression, when things interest me, and being in my zone of genius. Exactly. I love hearing that, Sara. Thank you so much for sharing those comments. And that's it. You just got to build that self-awareness. This is a tool that really can help you just question yourself, build that self-awareness, that consciousness, and ultimately know what your needs are so that you can communicate them lovingly in a relationship, so that the people around you can build a truly deep relationship with you. And then when you understand yourself more, you have more understanding and compassion for others. So I love, diving into this sort of stuff so we can understand ourselves, understand others, and build extraordinary qualities of relationships and life. So hope this message was valuable to all of you out there. Thank you so much for joining me. Sending lots of love, light, energy your way. And again, if the personality profiling sessions are something that are of interest to you, you want to understand how your brain is wired as an individual, so that you can know how you can recharge your batteries, how you can know where you should be focusing your energy for personal development and growth, so that you're not wasting your time and going down, areas where they're not really playing to your strengths, and you can fully commit to your key strengths and ultimately discover what I like to call your genius. That is where the power is, my friends. To know yourself, to build that confidence and courage to go after it, and ultimately create a truly fulfilling and totally aligned life. So hope this was valuable. Sending lots and lots and lots and lots of love to you guys, and I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow.